All right, Trevor, a lot to digest from BYU's loss at Kansas. Obviously, 3 turnovers, 2 of which led directly to touchdowns on those plays, stick out. But it seemed like BYU could have still overcome those and won the game. What did you see?
Yeah, this felt bad, didn't it? Because it felt like an opportunity missed, that they could have won this game, maybe should have won this game. And so the fact that they lost it feels kind of ugly. But I think there are a lot of silver linings here. And one of them is that after an incredibly physical game at Arkansas, they went to Kansas, one of the better teams in the Big 12, and literally played them to a standstill, but for those 2 plays that you mentioned. I mean, a fumble return for a touchdown, an interception return for a touchdown. Neither one was an awesome play by the defense necessarily, even though the defense did well on both of those plays. Both of them I thought were offensive mistakes more than defensive great plays. And other than those 2 plays, they played them literally to a standstill. And I think there's a lot of positive to be learned from how they did it.
One of the positives that Keaton Slovis kept BYU in that game. BYU was still going down and scoring on offense. Obviously, having, the interception was a weird bounce off of Isaac Raxton, another Kansas player, and then another guy picks it off. That's not on Keaton per se. Parker Kingston on that fumble. That was just a good, clean hit. I know a lot of people thought that was targeting. It did not check the boxes of targeting. Parker Kingston not available after that. I wonder if the defense maybe had to lift the offense a little bit more in this one and get a third down stop. They only had 1 in the second half. Create a turnover or something that maybe would have aided BYU a little bit in this game.
The defense did it in the first half. I mean, BYU was leading at halftime, even though they fell behind 7-0 on the second play of the game because of that Parker Kingston fumble, scoop and score. And he's just a freshman. And he's doing the best he can. Bless his heart. I don't want to rain on him, but just as an analysis standpoint, he didn't look to me like he was protecting his body or the football on that play. And so he was exposed to the effects of such a big clean hit because he wasn't leading with his pads and he wasn't protecting the ball, squeezing that ball with 2 hands the way he needed to. He was leading with his sternum. And that's part of the problem with that. And yet the defense rose up in the first half. The offense came back in the first half, and I thought they showed tremendous resilience. Now in the second half, when the defense started to get, let the run game of Kansas get away from them. That's not to be unexpected just because of the nature of the physicality of the game they played the week before against Arkansas. And in the first half, BYU's defense did just fine. But this is a defensive front that's known for depth that's a work in progress. And last week, not to take anything away from Kansas, but last week, Kansas didn't play an SEC team. They played Nevada, no disrespect to the Wolfpack. And so I thought BYU held on as best they could from a defensive standpoint. And really, it was the passing game on offense that kept them in this thing through all the problems. And that was absolutely stellar.
So let's talk about that, because the way that BYU is passing the ball is really efficient and effective right now. Unfortunately, BYU is not running the ball. They're not running the ball. And, teams are loading the box to stop the run. They're making BYU pass. It would seem, I can't give a specific number on what percentage that is right now, but BYU's ineffectiveness in rushing the ball is encapsulated in this Cougar Stats tweet a moment ago. Removing the 45-yard touchdown run by L.J. Martin against Arkansas, BYU has run 52 times for 41 yards the past 2 games. You've talked about the offensive line. You've been fired up. What is going on there, and is it fixable?
I don't think it's fixable this year. I don't think it's fixable. I mean, they've had enough reps. They've had enough games to show that they at least they know how to do it. And in watching them on tape, it just doesn't look like they know how to run block. That's the way it looks. It's hard for me to say that, but the tape is the tape. Show me where I'm wrong. And so that means they need to go to plan B, and plan B is to throw the ball. If I'm on defense, I don't know why you stack the line against the run. Why would you? They're not pushing anybody anywhere anyhow. And yet, knowing that BYU has to pass, the pass protection has been good enough for Keaton Slovis and those receivers to get better and better every week and to keep them in this game at Kansas. But the running attack, I mean, you give those numbers, right? What that means is that BYU is averaging 2 per carry. Not 2 yards, which would be bad, 2 feet per carry. Nevada last week against Kansas averaged 4 yards per carry. So it's just where they stand now, I think, is where they need to accept not from a standpoint of we accept that we can't run block and therefore we quit. They still have to try. They still have to try to get better. They still have to try to run block. They still need to find an answer. They need to seek it. But they also at some point need to say, okay, we're not going to win the ball running the game or win the game running the ball until we do. So the passing game needs to step up for that. That means that not just throw the deep passes down the field, but also be more creative with short passes in lieu of running plays. That means pick plays and crosses. There's a lot of air raid principles that they could use more of. For example, when you've got two wide receivers and they run up about 3 or 4 yards, and then they cross to create a traffic jam against man coverage and get one of them open that way. And if it's zone, then as they run across, then sit down between the zones at some point and gain 4 yards, which normally would have been the running play that now is getting them an average of about 2 feet, which isn't getting it done. So I'm not saying just surrender the run, but I am saying that they did a very good job against Kansas of using the passing attack to compensate for a lack of a run. And they'll need to do that even better going forward until the run materializes from the depths of the abyss.
And it's deep. We're talking to ESPN's Trevor Matich on BYU Sports Nation. Blaine Fowler said as much on the postgame show Saturday. He said, listen, this is essentially, he didn't say this, but I knew this is what he was saying. When you played, Trevor, you're a teammate of Blaine's, you guys ran the ball, but it wasn't, the way that BYU has run the ball the last 10 or 20 years. It was air raid principles, as you mentioned. And so we'll see if BYU kind of shifts to that or if they continue to pound the rock, because in comes Cincinnati on Friday. A team that's 36th in the country at 108 yards per game rushing. If BYU got 108, I think we'd feel pretty good. That's not actually a great number. But in come the Bearcats, who, played a 2-score game with Oklahoma, held them to 20 after they had been averaging 55. What do you make of Friday night on a short week ahead of General Conference, that matchup in Provo?
This is a tough one for BYU because it's the third consecutive physical game. I mean, Cincinnati's defense held Oklahoma to just 2 offensive touchdowns. 2 offensive touchdowns, and this is an Oklahoma offense that has been lighting up the scoreboard all season long. So BYU will have their work cut out for them on offense. From a defensive standpoint, Emory Jones, I'm assuming that he's healthy coming into this week, is a big physical quarterback along the lines of Arkansas's KJ Jefferson. And so it's another physical game that they'll have to play. And they'll have to compensate for wearing down on the defensive front in the second half potentially. And they'll have to figure out how to get them off the field better than they figured out how to get Kansas off the field. That may mean take more risks. That may mean, blitz more and hope those guys on the back end can hold up in coverage. But whatever they do, they're going to have to figure out a way to get some stops. I don't care about yards given up by the Cougar defense. I do care about stops. So if you think bend but don't break, that's kind of where they'll be, especially in the second half. Offensively, though, Cincinnati did a really good job of limiting Oklahoma's offense. So the Cougars will have to learn from how they did it, and they'll have to figure out ways to use the passing game to compensate for it. Once again, I'm looking for more air raid principles with more rub routes, more crossing routes, more creative screen passes, things that you can use instead of the run. Then try to run, but don't bang your head against the wall too much if it is not working.
And it has not quite yet. When will it work is the question. At this point, BYU's 3-1, have been, a kind of unexpected road win at Arkansas. Certainly at Kansas, that was kind of a 50-50-ish game. And in comes Cincinnati. Trevor, if BYU beats Cincinnati, they're 4-1 going into the bye week with a really tough October. I think we would have taken 3-2, but certainly BYU needs to take care of business at home to up its chances of making a bowl, if not 7-8 or whatever wins. How are you feeling about the Cougars at this point and the chance to be 4-1 going into the bye week?
I feel good. I feel good. You could see a path to getting there. You can see things that they're doing well, that they're getting better at every week. And keep in mind that this defense, assuming that it stays relatively healthy, and they had some injuries on both sides of the ball in that Kansas game. But if they can stay relatively healthy, every week they should be better because every week they'll have a better feel for their assignments and their adjustments in this new offense of Coach Jay Hill. And they'll be able to play faster. They'll be able to play more instinctively, and they're already doing it fairly well. But they'll get better and better because this is their first month in a brand new defense. So that's good. The passing game looks like it's getting much, much better. So, BYU does have tools that they can bring to bear in this game against Cincinnati that'll give them a chance to win it. But just like the Kansas game, and we talked about this last week, the way BYU, the path for BYU to win this game is not to overpower Kansas. They don't plan on that. The way for them to beat them is through greater discipline and execution. And there were mistakes in execution that hurt BYU against Kansas. If they can clean that up and beat the Bearcats in those two areas, the Cougars have a chance.
4-1 would be awfully nice to end September. Trevor, we appreciate the time. Best of luck on everything you're doing on ESPN this week.